we got a lot of stuff to get through, a lot of important work. So let's jump right in. Screenagers, welcome back into another edition of the Canon, the only movie podcast providing you with a watch list of the most essential movies. We obviously have another great movie for you today. We're going to be talking about James Cameron's The Terminator. I always drop the. I like to just call it Terminator, but that's neither here nor there. On today's episode, we've got two of my favorite guests back on. We're doing another Double D episode. Duke and Dhal. How are you guys doing? Welcome back to the Canon. How's it going, gentlemen?
Howdy.
Good. How's it going?
Doing well. So when I was like laying out the schedule for, release dates of all these episodes for this season, I was thinking that this would be a fun one to do today. It is the day after Halloween, or at least that's when this episode is dropping. May not necessarily be when you're listening to it, listener, but, figured that this movie is kind of, spooky adjacent, and we'll get into, some of that stuff as we get into the movie. But I figured this would be a cool way to, sort of cool down. Cool way to cool down. This would be an interesting way to cool down from the Halloween season. So excited to have you guys on. Dhal, as I understand, you are Screenage Wasteland's foremost expert on all things Terminator. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say about this movie. And Duke, I know that you are a fan of all things 80s, so also excited to hear about what you have to say about this.
80s and time travel.
You are the time travel guy.
I do like time travel too, so yeah.
Love it. Any big news from either of your camps that we need to talk about? Anything going on since we last had you on? Either of you?
Snowed up here in Canada, so just building the igloo for the winter.
Of course.
Oh, are we talking weather, or are we talking projects we're working on? Because that's how I took it.
Oh, a bit of both.
I just meant anything. Duke, just took it the weather route, but who doesn't love a good weather conversation?
He's Canadian. And you say I'm old.
It's either hot or it's either cold. There's no in between up here.
It's funny that Duke is the youngest Saw member, but somehow acts like the oldest. Loves all things 80s. Loves talking about the weather.
Hey, it just got cold down here, so I could blab about the weather too. It was like 86 yesterday, and today I think it was topped out at 45 or something like that.
You Fahrenheiters.
86 is cold?
We need some Celsius talk in here.
No. It was 86 yesterday. Today it was 45.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying it's finally cold down here in Texas. It finally cooled down to 85 degrees. I was like, that's insane.
No.
But 45 makes a lot more sense for it's colder here.
It's a wet. We typically have wet, cold weather too, which makes it a bit different. I'm sure you're in New York, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you get that.
It's wet here. Yeah. I had a lovely trip out west. I was in Mexico. I was in sunny San Diego. I was in LA, and it was beautiful there. Just amazing weather, 75 and sunny every day. And I got back to New York, and it's cold and rainy, and not going to lie, I kind of missed it, especially during, this time of year. It just feels appropriate for that to be the weather. But
San Diego.
I don't think San Diego's beautiful. It was my first time there. I don't think anyone is here though to listen to us blabber about the weather for, an extended period of time. So I think we should probably just jump into the Terminator because that's what folks are here for.
No,
right on.
I was going to do the intro music, but I butchered it right away. So
that sounded a little like Law and Order.
Well, it's kind of similar, I think, at the beginning. The Terminator intro,
a little bit, yeah.
It's like dun dun. I don't know.
Hey, if you want to watch a movie that's about a little bit about the weather and about California, you should definitely see LA Story.
Interesting. Which has a little bonus recommendation.
Has absolutely nothing to do with Terminator. You should definitely see that movie.
a bonus, the rare bonus recommendation on the front end. We love it.
You can
absolutely love it.
Up to you.
No, we're keeping it in. We're keeping it in. We're playing it live. But yeah, let's do this. let's talk about Terminator. As I said a little bit earlier, Dhal is the foremost expert on all things Terminator, and Duke is our expert and enthusiast on all things 80s and all things time travel. So we've really got the perfect folks on this episode to be talking about the movie. Gentlemen, you know where we like to start when we get into our canon episode or movies of the week. We always like to talk through our early experiences with the movie, first time watching, how we sort of relate to it. What's your overall history with this movie? And Dhal, I want to start with you first. So
This is tough because I know I saw it early, and I'm old enough to have seen it back when it came out in the theater. I know I didn't see it then because I was too young for that, but I'm sure I was too young to have seen it when I did see it. I was probably, oh man, I don't think I was 10 years old when I saw Terminator. It was probably a TV cut though, so maybe it wasn't as, violent or whatever. But yeah, I remember seeing all these movies like this, Terminator, Conan, you name it. And it was just, yeah, it was on TV all the time. My aunt had a video store that she managed, and we would go over there and scare quotes, rent movies. And so we always had things like Terminator laying around. And I don't know, we were big fans of Schwarzenegger in my house. I think Conan probably touched that off. I remember my dad was a big Conan comic book reader, and he always had this. He said if they could get someone to play Conan, it would be Schwarzenegger would be perfect for it. That's just based on like the old, I guess, Marvel comics or whatever. So he was, I think, already kind of a fan. So once Conan came out and Schwarzenegger's star was on the rise, we just kind of watched pretty much everything that came out, with Schwarzenegger. And a lot of it we went to see at the theater. I know I saw T2 there, but by then I was old enough to see it. So
I love it. So always kind of a Dhal family favorite.
For sure. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had like 3 Schwarzenegger posters on the wall of my room, and Terminator wasn't one, T2 was one. But yeah, yeah, he was a big guy in our house.
He's a big guy in most houses.
You're right. He didn't get to where he was by not being popular for sure.
Yeah, or just big.
I think that was a big joke he was making.
It was a.
You need to add the drum roll with the symbol for that joke, Raph.
I do. I do.
That was a dad joke.
I thought it was pretty good, man.
It was good. It was good. It was a dad joke.
Thank you, Duke. I appreciate that. Flattery will get you very far in this world. Okay. Duke, why don't you tell us a little bit about your first time watching this movie?
Here's the problem growing up after that generation. If it like Terminator, great film, love it. But it doesn't hold, like Back to the Future is my, movie that got me into movies. So I have memories about when I watched that. Terminator, I don't really remember the first time I watched it, what have you, but I did rewatch it, and then I was curious when I last watched it, because I'm watching it, and that what I love about revisiting movies is when it's been enough time that you forget the minor details. You know what happens, but you forget. Like I completely forgot. Like what Sarah Connor has a pet lizard, gecko, whatever that is.
Iguana.
It's iguana. It's like like why is that in the movie? Like I completely forgot. So I checked because I've been keeping track of all the movies I've watched for, I guess, a decade now. And I haven't seen Terminator since March 2015. So it's been a good 8 years since I've seen the Terminator, which blew my mind. And
wow.
But man, I know I can't. I've seen T2 quite a bit since then, but I know. So just like rewatching it last night, though, I mean, so great. That intro music's great. I mean, we could just talk, but yeah. Just I don't remember the first time, but man, each time revisiting it after an 8-year gap, it's just like watching it for the first time again. It's just amazing.
Oh yeah, and it's, I mean, like you said, it's a movie that you get when you rewatch it, you get caught up in those details because they're all just so great. There's like a certain like urgency to like every single moment, frame, decision that's made in the movie that feels so like alive and fresh. And I'm sure revisiting it after 8 years, like you did, Duke, I'm sure it just feels like so nice to like reconnect with those moments. Dhal, what was the last time that you watched this before? I assume that you rewatched it for this recording. So what was the last time that you rewatched it before that, prior to that?
I did not watch it for the recording, but only because I've seen it so many times. I tend to watch it once a year. So yeah, I didn't pull it up on my letterbox to see when I saw it last, but I think it's been sometime within the last 6 months that I watched it. It's just a yearly rewatch for me, man. It's just that good.
I call that.
Is this one of your
future?
Is this one of your favorite movies, Dhal?
Yeah, I think so, for sure.
Like top 5 for you? Is this within your like essential like movies to watch if you like want to understand like Dhal's experience as a film watcher, as a film lover?
Yeah, probably so. I always have a hard time picking between Terminator and Terminator 2 just because Terminator 2 landed at a time that was just, it was just perfect. I must have been like 13 or something when that came out. No, I was a little older than that. Anyway, it was perfect timing. I could go to the cinema and enjoy it and get the like full effect of it. And it was a big thing, like a big anticipation. So I always have trouble picking between them. I think they probably tickle different fancies for me. They are pretty different, but I don't know. The older I get, the more I appreciate Terminator. I guess I'm like you. I guess I dropped the. I appreciate it because of what it does. My dog's trying to get in. I appreciate what it does with so little, and because I grind that axe all the time, that's just my spiel, I guess. I would love to see more films do more with less, and Terminator has to be one of the best examples of that. $6.5 million, and look at what they're able to accomplish, and the focus is on the important stuff, like you said earlier. I can't remember how you put it, but it was you put it really well. Just there's kind of an economy of motion with this movie. Like everything counts and nothing's wasted. And I think you said it feels urgent. Every scene feels urgent. And I totally agree with that.
It's absolutely lovely. And obviously so much of that comes from Cameron's direction. So let's talk about him for a little bit, because this is his baby. This is his child. Like we don't have Terminator or The Terminator without James Cameron. So I was curious to know if either of you had any sort of background about how this movie kind of came to be, how Cameron dreamt it up, what was like his inspiration for this movie. If either of you have anything on just sort of the background of how this movie like came into existence, I feel like that would be a really interesting, jumping off point for the rest of our conversation.
Dhal, you can correct me, but I feel I got 2 background bits. I feel like one was he tried to get permission to shoot somewhere or do something, and then they wouldn't give him, like he wanted to shoot on a street or something, and then they wouldn't give him permission, so he did like guerrilla style or something, or he just like did it anyway. I don't know if that's Terminator. I mean, the other, of course, big random fact for the Terminator is that they wanted O.J. Simpson as the T-101 or whatever it is, and but they couldn't see him as a killer apparently. So do with that information as you will.
I mean,
yeah,
a jury of his peers felt the same way.
Oh, yikes! Is that too soon?
So yeah, that's I don't know, Dhal, you got to have some background.
Yeah, I wrote our Canon post for this particular movie, and I guess in the lead up to writing that, I dug out a book that I had bought several years ago, and I just never read. It's kind of a coffee table book. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I get coffee table books, I look at the pictures when I get them and I think, oh, that's cool. And then I put them away and I just never think to read them. But this thing came in a case, like a box case. It's called the Terminator Vault, I think is what it was called. And I would dig it out, but we're having some work done in our house and there's a bunch of crap blocking the way. So great book. Had a lot of really great background information on the film. And so there is a story in that book about how Cameron was working on Piranha. And I won't go into too much detail about that particular experience, but basically they took the film away from him. They were pulling some shenanigans and he just wasn't standing for it. So he flew to Rome where the producer was and was basically going to demand to see the film. And there's this funny story about him sneaking into the offices, like breaking in and recutting the film just to prove them wrong. But in the meantime, he got really sick, and I can't remember what it said he had. It wasn't the flu, but anyway, he was really, really sick, and he was staying in some, I don't remember if it was a hostel, but it was kind of a dump, and he didn't know anybody there. He basically just spent his last dime to get over there just because he was pissed off about this. And he had a fever and he was sleeping in this room or whatever that he was renting. And he had a fever dream. He woke up and he had this exoskeleton is that what they call it? Exoskeleton? Yeah. Whatever. Mm-hmm. He had that image in his mind. So he got out of bed and he says he's like, I thought I was dying. And so he gets out of bed, and sketches this Terminator. And he comes back. He had to borrow money from his dad to come back to the States because he was completely out of money. So, so he comes back and starts to write the thing. And he had a writing partner. I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head. But, yeah, they did a lot of stuff, just crazy stuff to try to get this movie made. At one point, he wanted Lance Henriksen to play the Terminator. And so they were trying to get funding from, forget the name of the production company, but Cameron had a meeting with these guys. And so he goes in and sits down in their lobby and Lance Henriksen comes in. I think Cameron was there first. Either way, Lance Henriksen comes in dressed as the Terminator, and he takes like the little foil wrapper that comes in cigarette packages, and he puts it over his teeth, like I guess wraps it over his teeth so his teeth look like metal. And then he goes up to the secretary and just says in like a loud voice, "Where is so-and-so, this guy that they're there to meet?" And apparently the people were like very close to calling the cops, and I guess the guy came out and called him back, but they made an impression on him with this gag, and it got his attention. I think it ended up securing some funding for the film. So I just always thought that was Cameron is just ballsy,
Oh yeah,
that's just a ballsy move. I mean,
yeah, that's.
and I guess the thing that's important to note is that Henriksen played this thing straight. Like he came in and acted threatening and I guess weird, and was playing it like he was the robot, the Terminator. So I just think that's pretty funny, man.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like that background is insane. I had kind of heard partially heard the fever dream story, but I couldn't totally remember it. So this is like a really weird callback to something I said earlier in the episode. But when I was in San Diego, I went to the Comic-Con museum, and there was like an interactive portion where there was a quiz about like robots and artificial intelligence in movies. And one of the questions was, how did James Cameron what was the inception of the Terminator, or the idea for the story behind the Terminator? So I'd like half heard that like a week ago, which is super random that I just like stumbled upon that. But thank you for sharing the full and actual story. I feel like all of that background is like, again, super, super, super helpful, because this was his second movie.
Yeah, technically, I guess. I don't know how they. I don't know how they credited Piranha. There was there was something to do with like the guy who was funding Piranha. He was getting these movies made, and I guess he was getting some help from studios in the States, and they had this stipulation that he had to hire American directors, but there was some like workaround where he basically would hire them, and then he would say they weren't doing a good job, and he'd fire them, and that way he could direct the movie himself, is what he was doing. So I don't know if it counts as his first film.
So this is like essentially his first film. This is definitely his breakout movie, which is absolutely wild for this to be the movie that, you know, announces you as the new, fresh, you know, director in Hollywood. Like, this is a big announcement. And Dhal, like you said, this is a ballsy ass movie. There's a lot about this movie that, you know, really, if you take a moment to take a step back and think about it for a second, really shouldn't work, but all of it does, which is just a testament to how great of a filmmaker James Cameron is. And the conversation could be had about where he sits, where he stands in, you know, the pantheon of directors all time, or, you know, modern directors post 80s or whatever. But you watch something like Terminator, you're like, yeah, the guy's got the goods.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And you're right, it shouldn't work. I remember watching a lot of movies in the 80s as a kid, and after Star Wars, particularly after, I guess, Return of the Jedi, the effects were just really good in that movie. I just remember seeing some of these sci-fi films and thinking, man, you know, if these guys can do this, why can't these movies have good effect? You know, I didn't understand how, you know, finances and stuff work, but, you know, for Cameron to make this movie on the budget that he did, it should just, it should look and feel like one of these cheap, campy sci-fi movies that I'm talking about, but it doesn't. It transcends that somehow. Not just because the effects are good, and the effects are a little cheesy in places. It's not like it's a perfect effects movie, but yeah, it shouldn't work as well as it does. It especially for the budget. It's just crazy.
Yeah. I was thinking the effects are, I was going to ask you guys what you thought about the effects as a whole. So Duke, do you have anything else on just like how these effects sort of, I hate to ask the question of how they stand up, but like, you know, for a modern audience or something like that, but just like, what do you make of all of the effects? I'm just going to throw in before you go, Duke, that I feel like the Schwarzenegger puppet is incredible and it always freaks me out, but I just like love it so much. I think it's great. I love when it cuts to him putting the sunglasses on, but Duke, please go ahead.
That I was just about to absolutely eviscerate that Schwarzenegger puppet, as you call it. That's the one part that always is like, oh, that looks so fake. That's the Schwarzenegger face mechanic animatronic is what I think is probably the worst part of that movie in terms of, I don't know, suspension of disbelief. I think the stop motion, like the exoskeleton at the end when it's kind of walking, stop motion all like, I actually think that almost works in that its favor. It kind of gives it this kind of robotic movement. The stop motion's great throughout at the beginning, you know, when they're blowing up tanks. I mean, I watched this after, like, I watched all the Terminator sequels earlier this year that I hadn't seen yet. And this is by far the dirtiest movie. Like, this actually feels like it's set after, you know, robots took over the world, you know? Or the sequels, Terminator Salvation, that it's not really, it looks a lot cleaner, less kind of junky. This gave me Mad Max vibes in the sense that, you know, they're in these vehicles and they're all, anyway. Schwarzenegger puppet though, like it's fine. Like when I don't know, you can just tell it's kind of fake, but I think that's just makeup in the 80s makeup too. Sometimes, you know, you can tell that they have makeup on, where nowadays they do a much better job kind of disguising it. But yeah, the eye, when he takes his eye off and then, you know, he's got the robotic red eye, that's always cool. And the glasses are, as you said, it's a great scene. Though later, you know, when he rams that car through the police station, or before that, when he says, "I'll be back," if you look, you can see his normal eye underneath through the sunglass.
Oh, way to ruin it for us, Duke.
No, sorry.
Thanks, Duke.
I'll never see it the same again. Great.
I was wondering. I was like, I wonder if that's like, how in these films kind of all get cleaned up every time they get to a new resolution, HD 4K. If maybe way back when in the 80s that wasn't as noticeable. I don't know.
For
Yeah.
sure.
I don't know. I mean, for me, it doesn't take me out of the movie.
It doesn't take me out.
I
I think I was just, because I was writing down notes, I think, so I was kind of paying more
yeah,
attention to certain things, and then I was like, oh, his eye, you can see, you can,
yeah.
you got
And
to
then
be looking. You got to be looking to see if he's actually got that robotic eye through there, or else you would never.
you were watching through like the like hypercritical lens that goes past like, is this a good movie? But just like, let me pick out every minor detail
Nitpick,
that
yeah.
might be. Yeah. But no, I was gonna say for the puppet, and then Dhal, I want to ask you how you feel about it. I feel like, yes, it does look pretty fake, and it's like a little funny when it cuts back to Schwarzenegger, his actual face with the sunglasses on. But I feel like whenever I see that scene, just thinking of like, this is always like my big thing when I'm watching movies of you watch a particular moment or you experience something in a movie and you think, wow, like someone thought of that. Someone was creative enough to build that and put it together and put it to screen and make it move around in a way that fits within the story that they're trying to tell. So I'm always kind of amazed that, just movies can do that. And like there were people who sat around and like thought up that thing. They thought to include that in the movie, and they like built that Schwarzenegger puppet. Like to me, that's awesome. No matter how much it maybe looks a little bit fake when it then cuts back to him, just the fact that someone did it is freaking amazing. So with that, Dhal, what are your thoughts on additional thoughts on the VFX as a whole and everything that Duke is nitpicking and tearing apart about your favorite movie?
My favorite movie. No, I see Duke's point. I think it's the interesting thing to me, actually, when I was just listening to you talk about it, I thought, they took the risk of spending money. Like they spent some of their budget on this thing when, it had to have been a risk. Like, what if we make this thing and it doesn't look good? Then we're going to have to cut around that, or we're going to have to cut away and not show it, which was totally an option. I mean, come on, like there's a lot of movies where you don't see. I was watching a Carpenter movie the other day, and I can't remember what the specific example was, but they just, they obviously didn't have the budget to do whatever it was going to be that was shown on screen, so they just cut away or use some, camera trickery to not show what it is that you would see that would give it away. So I don't know. I just think it like that took guts. Like they had to have believed in this shot to spend the money on it to make this thing. And I think I don't notice it that much just because I've seen the movie so many times, but I'm just playing the scene in my head. And yeah, I get where Duke's coming from. I mean, it could come off as a little hokey, especially when you're comparing it like he said in the very next scene to Schwarzenegger's actual face. The last couple times I've seen the movie, I noticed that the exoskeleton looks a little wonky when it's walking. And I mean, what are those? Those effects are basically the same thing that they did with Jason and the Argonauts, right? Like the skeletons with the swords. Isn't that more or less the same thing? It's just like
that's what I was praising. I think that actually adds to it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm glad they did it the way they did it. Otherwise, what would we have gotten? We probably would have just have seen the thing from the waist up or something. But
that exoskeleton is just. Like,
yeah, I think the design on all of that is amazing. Even the design of, the Schwarzenegger's red eye. Also, just the fact that they use that to like put him in cool sunglasses at night is awesome. Like that's a great little narrative and also vibe choice for the movie.
I forgot that he had like the, you always picture Schwarzenegger's Terminator with the leather jacket, and I forgot at the beginning of the movie that he doesn't have the leather jacket yet. It's whatever that's street urchin or not urchin, hoodlum
punk guy.
Bill Paxton's character and all his buddies are wearing. So he's got like this blue jean denim jacket almost, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
that's what it
doesn't
looks
look
like.
as
Okay.
good yet till he gets the leather and then the sunglasses. He slowly evolves.
See, I like that
So
look at the
cool.
beginning. It's a little rough around the edges, and there's something about that.
So I feel like this is a good opportunity for us to sort of transition into another question that I wanted to ask you guys, which is, of course, the Schwarzenegger of it all. I personally feel like this is a perfect use of him in this movie, but I was just intrigued to hear how you guys think about him in this role, and just sort of how it all fits. So Duke, we'll throw it to you first for this one.
You know what's interesting watching this after 8 years is that there's something different about his first portrayal in the original Terminator. He's not like he's got a down pat for like T2 and how kind of like the T800 T whatever it is works. Where this one, he kind of makes all these like he has the gun and then he'll jerk around the corners and stuff, and he's a lot more flexible in this one than I think he is in later ones. Like I'm just watching, I'm just like, this isn't. There's something different. I don't know if you guys ever picked that up, but I feel like just watching that, you can tell like, he evolves with the character as we're saying, but like there's something at the beginning where it's not as like robotic. There's nothing, where there's some, I don't know, flexibility, fluidness to his performance that I feel he decides to drop in the later sequels.
Interesting. I don't know if I've
Yeah,
ever picked up on that, but Dahl, what are your thoughts on Arnie and how he's used in this flick in particular?
I think in T2 it's just more polished, and then I really feel like in Terminator 3, I feel like it's almost a parody of Terminator 2. I really do. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. I just think the bad direction shows itself in that movie. T2, I definitely see what Duke is talking about. I've noticed that. I think it's just I think it's an artifact of Terminator being very raw and rough around the edges at the time, and it's a completely new thing for both of them. Schwarzenegger's feeling the character out, and trying to figure out how he's going to play it, and I just think it's just the whole thing is just a little rougher around the edges, and that's another thing I think I just appreciate more and more every time I watch that movie. Terminator 2 is amazing, great action scenes. It's front to back. It is just so good, but it's just a different animal than Terminator. It's kind of like, I guess, the difference between like punk and hair metal. One is like sleek and smooth. That's probably not the best, but you know what I mean? Like one is sleek and smooth and polished and overproduced, and the other's a little more rough around the edges, and you're not sure exactly what you're going to get. Terminator's a little unpredictable. You're not really sure what's coming around the corner. I just really love
I forgot
that
which
about
one
it.
of you guys said this, but this movie is a little dirtier, and they are two totally different movies. And listener, in case you're curious, I don't know if we mentioned this before, but T2 is also in the canon, so there will be a full episode where we will chat about that at length.
Terminator's more street. Terminator 2 is, and I think that also is kind of reflective of how the world was changing at the time. You had a lot of urban decay in 83 whenever they were shooting this or whenever. And some of that stuff was starting to work itself out by the 90s.
For sure. Bringing it back into to this Terminator, it will be hard to not reference Terminator 2 so much, because these two movies like really are, they're doing a lot with each other and they're bouncing off of each other. But just to stick to this first Terminator, I personally think that like the use of Schwarzenegger and giving him so few lines because his English wasn't great, it just like adds to the whole mystique and terror of the character. And I feel like that really works for this particular movie because yes, it is a sci-fi time travel movie, but it's also just like a straight up slasher flick. I don't know if you guys have ever had that same sort of reading. Dhal, do you read this more as a sci-fi movie? Can we consider this something that is kind of horror adjacent? With the Terminator character just being like a Michael Myers or a Freddy or a Jason. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I think it's both. I've always thought of it as a sci-fi movie, but I do think it's both. And I think people arguing that this is sort of a sci-fi version of Halloween, just yeah. I mean, I think that that's apt. I just, I mean, I don't think there's any reason why you can't call it a horror movie. Slasher, I don't know. That's sailor's territory. That's that's not my area of expertise, but it's definitely got horror elements, and I think it's built on the basic structure of that. It wouldn't surprise me. I don't recall ever reading this anywhere, but it wouldn't surprise me if Cameron wasn't somewhat inspired by Halloween, because I mean it follows a lot of the same formula down to the budget, the low budget.
Mm-hmm. Duke, where do you fall on that?
Well, I did count my rewatch as one of my October Halloween watch list. It's on my letterbox list, so I count this as a horror film. I like the slasher angle. I've been watching a couple movies I own that I haven't watched before in my back catalog, and if those films I've just been watching count as slashers, Terminator definitely does, because this is a lot more brutal. He does, there's a lot of killing. He's targeting Sarah Connors. There's mention that, serial killer, phone book killer, I think is the name they used. Definitely, this is a much better film than what I've been watching that are so-called slashers. So while I don't think I'd ever call this a slasher, it definitely does have the structure to it. It's just more heavy sci-fi. Like this is sci-fi horror where the sequels go sci-fi action.
Yeah.
Like I would never.
I would really consider this an action movie.
No, this is sci-fi horror for sure.
Who wins? Who wins in a versus match? The T-100 or Jason?
Jason. Oh boy.
That's. I would watch that movie.
Jason's still human, at least. Where Michael. Not Michael. Now we're adding Michael Myers.
Freddy versus Jason versus the T-100.
Well, you know what I'm thinking of now is how Terminator becomes the hero, and now I can't stop thinking, like, what happened if, like, in Halloween 2, Michael Myers just all of a sudden became the good guy, and then he's fighting like he's fighting like an even darker shape. That's what's in my head now. But again, Terminator is an android where all these, all Michael, Freddy. Well, Freddy's kind of supernatural, but Jason, they're all human-ish, So I feel like Terminator has the edge.
Leaning a little supernatural.
And also Terminator probably doesn't dream, so Freddy can't really. So I think Terminator's
I'm sure there are ways to get around that plot hole.
Oh, I'm sure.
Freddy versus Jason wasn't.
I'm already writing.
Dogger's typing away on the fan
I'm
fiction.
Writing the script. Yeah, I'm writing the script in my head where Freddy somehow becomes like a hacker or something,
Oh, that
he's going to hack the Terminator's mainframe.
Dhal.
Yes, sir.
Don't give away the goods. We need to keep this idea to ourselves, and we'll sell it to Hollywood in a couple months. The strike is over. We can get back to work. We can pitch the script. Let's not give away too many of the good ideas.
Okay, we'll cut this out. We got to cut
Freddy
this out.
Freddy hacking is actually not a bad idea. Kids today use virtual reality, so they never sleep.
Duke, we're giving away too much.
Man, that's actually not a bad idea.
There's a reboot. Hey,
guys, we got to cut it. We can't say too much.
We're saying Hollywood's too late. Hollywood's already greenlit it. It's on deadline.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this though, as I've been making my way through the Friday the 13th movies. I was thinking about this, and I was, it occurred to me, man, the Terminator's just this tough character. You can't kill it. She's got to squish him in a hydraulic press to get rid of the dang thing. And
great scene.
You just like, in my mind, I think, there's no comparison to Michael Myers or Freddy or Jason, but this thing dies in one movie. I mean, Jason, how many movies did he make it through? 10? Something like that?
12.
I think Jason's got to win in a heads up match, man. I think Jason takes it.
Jason, the last thing I'll say on this is Jason has never faced an opponent like Sarah Connor. So
that's true.
That.
That's true. Tommy Jarvis ain't got nothing on Sarah Connor.
Nothing. Bringing it back to the Terminator. as much as I would love to continue chatting about who would win in a hypothetical slasher fight, so we sort of just mentioned, this movie, while it does have some elements of horror to it, it is like at its core, at its base, it's a sci-fi movie. Beyond that, it's a time travel movie. And Duke, I think we spoke about this when you were on for a Back to the Future episode, but sort of Back to the Future and the Terminator are really like two of our early versions of time travel in cinema. It's kind of weird that it's something that wasn't really thought about until a whole lot, at least until the 80s. So, one, what do you guys think of the time travel science in this movie? I'm sure that there's a lot to be nitpicked, but just a quick, what do you think about it, Duke?
Well, I want to throw in a factual correction. Technically, there was the time machine. H.G. Wells' adaptation of the Time Machine novel was from 1960. But in terms of actually doing something watchable, no offense to the film adaptation, Back to the Future and Terminator have it. I was, me and another Saw writer, Jacob Holmes, we did the 50 greatest time travel movies a couple years ago. Back to the Future was 1. Terminator was 2. I think we gave Back to the Future the edge just because I'm biased, but also Back to the Future does more with the concept of time travel, where Terminator uses time travel as a means to kind of kickstart its story. Terminator is, of course, a classic time loop story in that John Connor sends Kyle Reese back in time to save his mother, but Kyle Reese is also his father. So, of course, you go, well, there's one timeline where, I don't know, this doesn't really work because Sarah Connor, who is John Connor's father in the original timeline, that then John Connor sends Kyle Reese back in time and then Kyle Reese becomes his father. Similar to how Marty McFly goes back in time, breaks up his parents, gets them back together, but when he comes back, the timeline has changed. Well, where the original Marty, there's a theory that the original Marty from that timeline then disappears, so it's, what happens. There's something, because Kyle Reese is the father of John Connor. There's an original timeline where, how does John Connor exist before Kyle Reese goes back, for them
he
to
doesn't.
Conceive. It's a mindfuck. It's a time loop. It's a time loop. You can't do it. You just got to go with it.
Yeah. Well, all right, Duke, I have one quick comment on that, but I'll save it for after Dhal gives us his thoughts on just the time travel science of all of this.
Oh, I love the science though. The you got to be, no clothes matter, and then you just kind of come down in a cool ball.
If I were going to time travel, cool. it would be in the nude. That's the only way to time travel.
I will point out, I did like how, of course, the T100, I'm going to call, I think that's what this version's called. Because he's just metal. He has the cool, like, kind of superhero landing where Kyle Reese just kind of just absolutely smokes the pavement, and you can tell like he is just hurting from time traveling, where it affected the T100 absolutely not at all.
It's such a minor detail, but it tells us so much about those two characters so early on. It's so good. It's so good. But yeah, Dhal, tell us what are your thoughts about the time travel science of?
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care about the science. I don't give a shit. Because my thing is you can pick things apart. I mean, come on, we're talking about a bodybuilder robot that comes back in time to kill people. I don't really need to think this deeply about it. I don't really care whether the science makes sense or not, because Cameron tells a great story with characters that we can relate to. He manages to work in a love story. It's paced really well. It's shot really well. It's visually very interesting. And I think when you do all of those things really well, it's acted really well. When you do all those things really well, little details like that don't matter. We're willing to go along for the ride because otherwise genre fiction wouldn't exist. One thing I thought of kind of later in life is Kyle Reese describes the Terminators as infiltrator units. So they sneak into these human bases and wipe them out. How does it make any sense for a guy that big and muscular to be an infiltrator unit? You would want it to be. That's why he wanted to cast Lance Hendrickson in the role, because he was more non-assuming. But I don't care. Schwarzenegger is cool. He's visually very interesting looking. It doesn't matter. And frankly, that short scene we see where Kyle Reese is remembering or whatever he's doing, and you see the other Terminator, he's interesting looking too. He's scary. It works. It doesn't need to make sense. These are movies. It's a visual language. So, all the other science crap, whatever. I don't care.
Dhal, that's you're approaching it from the right perspective, and I think a lot of us can learn from what you're saying. And I'm not being sarcastic or patronizing or anything. I genuinely think that there's a lot that the rest of us can learn from watching movies based on what you're saying. The science, it introduces itself. It sets up a really cool story. It allows for cool moments. It allows for, like I was saying before, it allows for that moment of, a really quick thing that tells us a lot about two different characters. And it uses the time travel to do that. If that's what your time travel is being used for actual cinematic purposes, then that's cool. And we don't need to get into the nitty gritty of the science of it all. So, Dhal,
right
we do thank you for providing us with that reading. Duke, the thing that I was going to mention, based on what you were saying and the whole time loop of it all, which is also kind of tying in what Dhal is saying in terms of the time travel just being there for, just being there to for the movie's benefit, is it's really a movie about fate and faith. And Sarah Connor was always fated to meet Kyle Reese and birth John Connor and lead the revolution. It doesn't matter what she thinks about how insignificant she is, or doubting herself about whether or not that she can make all this happen. John Connor sending Kyle Reese back, it was always fated to happen. And it's it's super hopeful, happy movie in that sense, where this greatness was always going to occur. And that's something that I haven't really picked up on in past viewings, but it did really speak to me this last time that I was watching that. Duke, I don't know if you've picked up on anything sort of similar or had similar feelings about that aspect of the story.
Not the way you just said it, but I did kind of like I said, I watched all the sequels earlier this year, kind of seeing Sarah Connor, like you were saying before, she's fated to become this warrior, the mother of John Connor. You're seeing her at that period before where she doesn't believe that she's this great person or this icon. And it's cool to kind of contrast, Linda Hamilton's performance in this movie with the ones from her in T2 and Dark Fate, where she is playing, a badass, where she is capable and she does believe in herself. So, it's just cool to kind of see, I guess, see her become the thing she thought she couldn't be in. But, yeah, I know what you're saying earlier. And Dogger and again, time travel doesn't exist. So, I don't think we should ever pick apart time, a movie's decision on how it portrays it.
Oh shit.
Oh man, mindfuck right there. Holy smokes.
Oh my God.
Have you guys ever heard of John Titor or John Teeter? I don't know how you pronounce it.
I have not.
Titor. Go Google that later.
So the other interesting science fiction aspect of this movie, aside from the time travel, is the sort of AI war, man versus machine sort of aspect of it. So when I was rewatching it today, one of the most terrifying ideas is that the future that they're fighting the robots in is only about 6 years from the future that we are currently living in today. So that's pretty scary. And there's a bunch of scary stuff happening in the news every single day with advancements in artificial intelligence and what it's able to do. It's almost like none of those people have seen Terminator or, any other movie that is about what will happen when AI is able to wipe us all out. But I think the most interesting thing about this movie and what Cameron is doing is that the artificial intelligence or the machines that wipe out the human race or are attempting to wipe out the human race, what's scary about them isn't that they outsmart us. They just outgun us. They just outpower us, which is, to me, I think a bit more terrifying. Dhal, what do you make of machines just absolutely eviscerating us, not with higher intelligence, but just bigger guns?
Yeah, I don't know that I really have a whole lot to say about it. I think that if you start to think too much about this kind of thing, things start to break down. With the believability. I just picturing these exoskeletons walking across a field of skulls, and they've got guns that they're holding on to. Why isn't his arm just a gun? Or why are they? I don't know. I just feel like it just starts to break down.
Yeah.
I heard a TED talk a few years back, and it might have already been a couple of years old at that point, but the guy talking said something that I thought was a little more terrifying than what movies like Terminator actually give us. And that is that AI won't even really consider us, that we will be like ants to them. So imagine how we treat ants. We don't really think about them. If we step on one, we don't know it. If they're in our yard and they're a nuisance, we just wipe them out. I think that's just even more terrifying because there's no consideration given at all. It's just,
that almost puts me at ease, because if AI, if how the movies do it, if we're supposed to believe that AI becomes this all powerful something we should fear, but now the way you're saying it, Dhal, like at that point, AI wouldn't even consider. Like, why would AI want to stay on Earth if AI gets to the point where it's so smart? It's developing, it's all this technology is getting advanced. Why wouldn't it just leave? We talk about wanting to go to Mars. Well, AI would probably just leave. They'd build a spaceship and they'd leave, explore the galaxy.
I don't know why they would,
or anything.
I don't know why they would see us as a threat. And I think there's I probably mentioned this in every damn podcast we do, but William Gibson has written about this stuff. I think in Neuromancer, there's an AI that is actually, I think it's kept in outer space. It's kept in a space station, and then it links up with another AI on planet Earth. But yeah, I don't know what he's envisioning is probably a little more likely. I don't see why they would even.
I wasn't necessarily trying to get us to the believability aspect or anything. More so just as a cinematic tool. I feel like most stories that we read or watch that are about AI, it's about how they outsmart us, and that's where the problems rise from. Whereas I think this one, it's terrifying because it's just outgunning us. And Dhal, like you said, the image of this robot holding a machine gun, stepping on the skulls of dead human beings is just like a terrifying image. And I feel like that, again, it's just another thing that adds to the intent of this movie. Like, this movie it's pretty scary, it's pretty grimy, it's grungy, and part of what makes it so scary is images like that and ideas like that.
Yeah, well, what's more horrifying than dying in a nuclear blast, just being instantly incinerated? That's pretty horrifying.
Pretty scary stuff. Or Arnold Schwarzenegger running up on your house and blasting you away.
Yeah, totally. Fuck you, asshole.
Also pretty terrifying. So Sarah Connor's pretty cool. Do you guys have anything on Linda Hamilton and her performance, or any of the other performances really in this movie? I know we talked about Schwarzenegger a little bit, but was just curious about your thoughts about everything else, or everyone else rather.
I don't know. I kind of talked about Linda Hamilton's performance a bit earlier, contrasting with her other films. I don't know. As for the character of Sarah Connor, I think the one thing that I kind of thought was really Sailor likes to say this, where the thing that kind of takes him out of a movie is when like a kid or a character does something really stupid that you wouldn't do in real life. And I feel like Linda Hamilton telling her mom that she, like, she's in the hotel room and giving her that phone number is something that I feel like in real life you probably still wouldn't do, knowing that, the Terminator can do all this stuff, and then she just gives away the location just like that. I don't know. That's something that I'm always like, really, Sarah Connor? I don't know.
Damn Duke.
But then we got that really cool thing where we find out that the Terminator can manipulate voices. So I don't, maybe that was just a story decision to show that. But
so you would have been in the hotel room. You would have called your mom, terrified for your life because there is this crazy cyborg thing chasing you. And when you called your mom and you're talking to her and she's like, "Hey, where are you? Are you safe?" You would have been like, "Wait, this might be the Terminator."
Well, she says she's safe, but then like the mom is pressing her hard for like, "Give me your phone number. How am I going to contact you?" Like, Sarah Connor, you're not staying in that hotel room for the rest of your life. You're moving on again. And then even at the end of that conversation, when like the Terminator says like, "Bye, honey," or she says something, and then Sarah Connor kind of pauses, almost like she's never heard her mom say that word to her before, that term of endearment. And then she kind of hangs up and she's like, You can see it on her face where she's like, that didn't feel right. And it's just, I don't know. I just feel like it's
I'm going to say it.
Should have done.
I think you're nitpicking a little bit too much.
I'm nitpicking, but hey, I mean, you can't. I like Sarah Connor. I like the performance. That's all I got to say is that one thing in that movie was like, I don't know. If Kyle Reese was in the room with her, he would have been like hanging up the phone.
Dhal, what do you think about Sarah Connor?
I love how Linda Hamilton goes from being this just really innocent, naive character at the beginning. She's just, enjoying her life. She rides her little moped to work or whatever, little scooter. And then she has this whole thing just like unloaded on her. This scrappy, wiry dude shows up and is like, "Well, here's the thing." And then you just see her change throughout the movie. And I mean, there's a lot of there's been a lot of things said about her being this, badass character, this heroine, blah, blah, blah. She's a badass female character, whatever. But I've never really heard anybody talk that much about her performance. And so I just think I think it's one thing that's lacking in movies nowadays. We don't really get really good arcs. And I think that is just a solid arc, going from this completely naive character to this character at the end who has taken on the responsibility of this and is visibly changed at the end. Like that scene at the end where the mountains are in the background and the storm's coming over the mountains. She's in the Jeep. That's one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Yeah.
And I just think it's like, man, if you bookend that, like looking at her at the beginning with the one at the end, you can completely see where she's going. It's not, I think that's also the beauty of the sequel is it's not a surprise when we find her the way she is. This woman is taking on the responsibility. She's determined and she's going to make it happen. And I just think it's a wonderful character art.
Oh yeah. It's incredible. She's a hero of destiny, right? Like she was always destined to be a hero. And then at the end, you see her totally transformed into what she was always going to become. And it's amazing to see it, even if it is just at the end of the movie. It's amazing to watch her go through that whole progression throughout the entire course of it. Absolutely. One of my favorite side characters is the police chief. He's just such a funny, goofy guy. Random aside, but we like that guy. Before we get into our recommendations and maybe just some final words about the Terminator itself, we've talked a little bit about T2. We've talked about some of the other sequels, but I just wanted to give both of you guys a couple of minutes to quickly run through your thoughts on sort of the rest of the franchise, just because it is one of the biggest franchises in modern, and by modern I mean like post 70s cinema. It is one of the biggest franchises, one of the biggest names, one of the most recognizable franchises. So Duke, I know that you had some takes and some thoughts about some of the other Terminator movies that you wanted to share with us, so we'll kick it over to you first.
Okay,
for
great.
that.
I think Terminator is interesting. The fact that I think there's only two great films in that franchise, the first and the second. All the sequels have varying degrees of watchability. I will say Dark Fate, I think, could have actually been a great trilogy capper, because this is like the Halloween franchise, to bring it back to horror, where they like to ignore almost every other sequel now. Dark Fate has I like the opening. There's a lot of people who don't like the opening. That's like a little flashback to the post T2 timeline. I think that Dark Fate in general would have been more well received had it actually felt like the end of something and not the beginning of a new trilogy, where they introduced a new Sarah Connor character and a new Terminator character. 3's not bad. I did like Terminator Salvation, actually seeing the war, kind of that area. I know, Dahlgren, you always talk about wanting to see a Terminator film actually set during the post Judgment Day timeline, and I don't know, like Terminator is just a bunch. After 2, it's a bunch of sequels that set up new ideas for sequels that in the end they decided to ignore and try something else. And Genesis isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. People gave it a lot of, I don't know, ire, but it's all the sequels have something to enjoy. You just gotta go in knowing that they're nothing's topping T1 and T2.
Well said. Well said.
And I'd love to
Dhal,
watch the TV series, but it's not on. They need to be streaming where I'm watching, because I heard the TV series is actually probably the best thing after the Cameron films.
That's what I've heard.
What's the name of the TV series again?
Terminator,
Sarah Connor Chronicles.
The Connor
Yes. The Connor Crolls.
The Sarah Connor Crolls. I think that got canceled. That was kind of in the issue with the writer strike. I think the writer strike kind of screwed up its second season, and then it lost like a bunch of viewership between the wait, and so that's why it kind of got canceled. So that probably could have lasted like a couple more seasons, but we'll never know. But I hear it's really great. If it got a new like DVD collection, I'd be buying it, because I do want to check it out. And it's just not streaming anywhere, at least in my area. So come on, Hollywood. Physical media matters.
Come on. Physical media matters. All media matters.
Yeah, I second that. Or third that.
Dhal, what are your thoughts on the rest of the Terminator franchise?
Just garbage. I can do without all of it. Terminator 3 is just awful. I rewatched it a few months back, and I couldn't believe how bad it was. I hadn't seen it in a long time. I don't think I disliked it that much when I saw it in the theater, but I was much younger and probably just entertained and happy to be entertained. See Schwarzenegger hamming it up again. But
yeah,
I feel like they're doing a parody. So yeah, I don't like that one. I thought Genesis was horrible. Salvation's not bad. The thing I don't like about Salvation is that we all wanted to see that future with Cameron's aesthetic. We wanted to see that blue tinted, purple laser blaster guns, that aesthetic was just really interesting looking. And I think I don't know what they were doing. It looked more like the Matrix or something to me, the effect they were going for. And it's not a terrible movie. I just don't really see it as a Terminator movie all that much. I just don't think of it as a part of the canon. So I just pretty much count 1 and 2. I never saw Dark Fate. I just heard so many bad things about it. I just I'm going to save myself this misery. I went to see Genesis at the theater, and what the hell was I thinking?
Did you walk out?
Stupid. No. I think the only movie I ever walked out of was that Demon Barber of Fleet Street or whatever.
Don't know how, but
Sweetie Todd.
Yeah. My wife and I, we went to that movie and we didn't know it was a musical, and we both hate musicals, and we're like, screw this, we're out.
That's hilarious.
Peace out. No, I didn't walk out of it. It was bad though. God, it was stupid. The problem with the Terminator franchise, okay, is the same problem with the Halloween franchise and the Freddy franchise and the Jason Friday the 13th franchise. They just want to recreate the wheel every time. and it's just diminishing returns. They're like, how long can we milk this before the money runs out? You've got to do something different with these movies. Terminator 3 should have been something completely different. It's a really rich world that you can play in. If you want to go into the future and mess around with that, you can. There's different things that you could do. At this point, if I were going to reboot the franchise, I would give some director like $20 million and just say, go make the best personal, character-driven Terminator movie you can make. Yeah. Take it back to basics. Let's see some different characters. Let's put aside, that Arnie is the face of this franchise. That's great, but that's in the past. That's done. Let's have a story in this world that's different. It's about some different characters.
Yeah, I was going to say, so all the movies that you guys are talking about sound like it sounds like Greek to me. I don't know, what you guys are talking about. I think I maybe saw 3 around when it came out, but other than that, I haven't seen any of the other ones. My view of the Terminator sequels is sort of how I view some of the Star Wars stuff. It is like such a rich world and there is so much that you can play with, but at the same time, part of why those earlier versions are ones that we enjoy so much is because we're not shown everything. We don't have the scene of Han saying that he doesn't have a family and that's why he gets the last name Solo.
For sure.
The world is so much richer when it's left to our imaginations. The Terminator world is so much richer when we just have those few scenes of what the future, may have looked like and how dirty and grimy it was. We don't need, we don't need explanation for all of this. I don't need to see how the war played out. I don't need to see, is it Christian Bale who plays John Connor in one of them? We don't need to see him leading the troops. So I've never really had interest in watching any of the Terminator movies. I think another problem that they have is I was just looking through the list and they have some like pretty underwhelming directors who are attached to or were attached to all of these Terminator sequels. So like just the quality of filmmaking isn't up to the par of, someone who's on the level of James Cameron, which obviously is going to hurt you. But it's just like, it's kind of sad every like 3 years, 4 years, 5 years when another Terminator movie gets churned out. And it just seems like there's no hope for it being any good. I hope someday we're pleasantly surprised and, there is another installment in this franchise that is awesome and, makes people think about cool things and have cool, interesting conversations. But it just doesn't seem like that's what they're interested in. It's just, how can we milk this thing for as much money as possible?
Wouldn't it be great if James Cameron cared as much about Terminator as he does Avatar, and he would spend the last 20 years perfecting the Terminator universe instead of...
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but
yes.
At the same time, maybe he realized with, Terminator and T2 that he told all of the Terminator stories that he needed to tell, or like that needed to be told.
And I think you're right.
That's it.
I mean, yeah, I agree. I agree with everything you said. The point I was making earlier is that they're gonna make these movies, so let's do something different. But I actually agree with you. I think they just should put it in a can and be done with it. Just let it alone because they're not making any better. What was that?
That was a cannon.
Oh. I was about to say, I was like, Raph, did you just like jet fly by? Like, what was
that? New York just got nuked.
No.
That was just Judgment Day. Holy smokes.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, that was...
Skynet went online. Holy.
Oh, my God. I think that actually... I feel like in the story timeline of the Terminator world, it probably would have happened already. It's probably like 2021.
Every sequel, Raph, that's what you're missing out on. Every sequel pushes Judgment Day back to the day the movie's released. It's 92, then it's 2003, then I think it's 2017, and then it's...
Of course. I can't believe I'm missing all this stuff.
No, you're not.
So that's enough about the poopy versions of Terminator. We're here to talk about the OG Terminator. We're here to celebrate film. That's what we like to do here at the Canon. So we love the Terminator. It's amazing. It obviously deserves its place within the canon. I couldn't imagine a canon without it. If you are a movie fan, this is something that you should definitely check out. It's influenced a lot of things that we watch today, and it birthed a franchise that maybe should or should not be around. Duke, Dhal, any final words about the Terminator before we jump into our recommendations?
No,
I'm good,
we've
man.
said it all. We've said it all.
We've said it all. Well, there you have it, listener. This was the Terminator. We covered it all. Now we can jump into our recommendations. Everyone's favorite segment of the show. Duke, Dhal, you guys know the rules. I know the rules. Listener, in case you're new, we'll run through them very quickly. For each movie that we introduce into the canon, we will also give 3 recommendations for other things to check out if you like said movie. Of those recommendations, at least one of them has to be another movie. It cannot be a movie that is also in the canon, but the other 2 recommendations, they can be any and everything. We like to do music, TV shows, comic books, restaurants. Like to get a little weird with it. We like to get out there. The connections to the movie can be as loose or as wild as and creative as we can get. With all that said, Duke, Dhal, let's jump into it. We'll go same order of your names that I just said. So we'll go Duke, Dhal, Raph, and then we'll loop back around and get into it. Let's Duke, kick us off.
Okay, first up, classic, going with a time travel movie, Triangle. It is like a British psychological thriller. It has some horror to it, similar to the Terminator, I'd say. I watched this back when I did the 50 greatest time travel movies list. I don't want to say too much about it because a lot of spoilers if I do, but basically it follows a group of characters who are kind of stuck on this ocean liner that's kind of been abandoned, and time travel shenanigans ensue. It is kind of like a little slasher almost, and I'll just say, it doesn't reveal its full hand until the very end, so
Nice.
But again, I'm picking it because of its time travel ties to Terminator and how it uses time travel as a narrative device. So Triangle, check it out. It should be streaming. That's how I watched it. So really good film.
Nice.
Really great film. I should be rewatching it.
Looks interesting. Definitely worth checking out. Sweet. Dhal, what do you have for us?
Yeah, I'm going to recommend the Berserker book series by Fred Saberhagen. There's no N in that. Yeah, this is a book series that came out in the 70s or 60s, maybe. And I think he was writing these well into the 80s. There's a bunch of them out there. Some of them are like collected short stories, but the premise is there is a murderous machine race of machines that has been unleashed on the universe, galaxy, whatever, by some long dead alien race. And these machines are self-replicating, and they just go around. They were created to win a war with another species. Unfortunately, these machines just kept going, and so they're all about annihilation. So they just go around wiping out sentient life. And I think the series has a lot in common with the Terminator.
Yeah.
And the art for these are really great. The cover art, if you can get a hold of some of these paperback copies, it's just some really interesting stories. They're fun. They're not all of them are deep. And the short stories are a really easy way to get into it, to get into the series. But yeah, there's a ton of them.
That sounds rad. I like that pick. It's a good first pick. Coming in hot. You guys are both coming in very hot. I love it. That's why we love this segment. Cool. For my first pick, I'm going to go with another movie that is about threats from AI destroying everything as we know it. Also starring one of the biggest movie stars of all time, but instead of Arnold Schwarzenegger as one of the destructive pieces of AI. It's a movie starring our Lord and Savior. I probably shouldn't use that phrasing for this guy. Starring Tom Cruise. I'm of course talking about Mission: Impossible - Dead Reckoning: Part 1.
Interesting.
I don't think there's
just
a colon
the AI
after
connection
in between Reckoning and Part 1. It's just Dead Reckoning Part 1.
That's silly. Of course there's a colon.
You want to know what's even sillier? Rumor has it, because Mission 8 just got delayed, they're going to retitle it, so it's not called Dead Reckoning Part 2.
Oh, sorry. I missed the full title. Mission: Impossible - Dead Reckoning: Part 1 open parens Mission: Impossible - Part 8 for the whole series, for the whole series, close parentheses. I think that's the official full title of it.
Whew. I'm glad you closed those parentheses.
You're taking me back to my you're taking me back to my university days, having to cite something. Holy smokes.
But yeah, just another movie about threats of AI. And
can you imagine being around the water cooler and like that's how you tell someone to see the movie? Rattle off that
coworker title. Coworkers would hate me even more than they already do. But yeah, that's my first pick. Not nearly as exciting as either of yours, but
interesting.
I love my boy Tommy C, and I'm always going to find ways to recommend his movies. I know it's not the best guy to be behind, but I'm a big fan. I hate to say it, but I'm a big fan.
Right on.
Got to separate the art from the artist, Raph.
Not always, but for this guy, I can.
Dead Reckoning.
All right, Duke. What's your second pick?
Second pick, Dahlgren. I hope you didn't pick this. And if you did, let me know, because I'll pick something else. I'm going with another 2023 movie that deals with AI. The Creator came in theaters.
Oh, nice.
Went in theaters without much of a sound, whatever that saying is. I saw it in theaters. I liked it. It's a film that studios don't make anymore, and they should. It's original. It's a bit boring in places, sure. Is it visually stunning for like an $80 million film? Yes. It has better special effects than most Marvel movies lately. I don't like, if they can do that with 80 million, there's no reason all these Marvel movies shouldn't just look stunning. Great story, kind of about it's humans versus AI. There's this AI kind of weapon, they call it, that's going to just end the war. For the AI is going to win. And it's this isn't a spoiler, I don't think. It's just this kid. It's like this AI kid. And so then there's a human, and he kind of protects it. It's a nice little road trip film. Very good, great cast too. You got Denzel's kid, John David or David?
John David, yeah.
John David Washington, yeah. Who is slowly carving out quite a nice little sci-fi niche in his filmography. This and Tenet. This is leagues better than Tenet. I don't know where you fall on that film, but I like The Creator quite a bit, and I wish it did better at the box office so that it would give studios more incentive to fund these types of films. And the director of this, who did Rogue One, I don't remember his name, sorry buddy. But he was even talking, Gareth Edwards. He was even talking in a interview about how when you have less money in your budget, it forces you to get creative. Similar to like how the Terminator, you don't, when you have a lot of money, you start showing stuff you don't need to show. Your eyes become wide. You see the possibilities. Where when you have a smaller budget, he was saying, it forces you to think, how can I capture this shot? What's the, how to stretch the dollar. And he was then talking about how Star Wars and Marvel could definitely replicate that. It's easier, he says, to go from having a smaller budget to a big budget than it is to have to go from a big to smaller, vice versa, something like that. But yeah, Creator, love it. If it's still in your theater, go watch it. Give it all the box office earnings it can get.
Nice. Good pick. Something very current. We like that. Dhal, what's your second pick?
I am going to go with Colossus, The Forbin Project from 1970, directed by Joseph Sargent and starring a bunch of people that I don't know. This movie is kind of slow. It is of its era for sure. It's coming out of the 60s, but it's about AI run amok. One of these government cedes too much power to computers and it runs amok. And like I said, it's paced a bit slow, but it is related, I think, to Terminator in themes and stuff like that. And it's definitely worth a watch if you're interested in this kind of thing, and you don't mind something that's a bit old, something that's a bit dated. Definitely add this into your watch list and check it out.
Love it. Yeah, that sounds like an interesting pick. I like when we go a little bit off the beaten path for some interesting movies that folks otherwise maybe wouldn't check out. That's why we love this portion of the episode. So with my second pick, I'm going to go with another movie, and I didn't realize it when I picked it, but it's actually another Tom Cruise movie. But there's something about Terminator, and it's like a Los Angeles movie that like pretty much just takes place at night. It might be over the course of one night, and I don't know why, but I just couldn't shake the feeling of another movie that takes place in Los Angeles over the course of a night with an unhinged killer on the loose. I'm of course talking about Michael Mann's Collateral.
Oh.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a weird connection, but for some reason while I was watching Terminator, I just couldn't stop thinking about its connection to Collateral. And I totally did not realize when I wrote it down that I was picking two Tom Cruise movies.
Classic.
We'll allow it, Raph. We'll allow it.
We'll allow it. And you know what? I'll draw another comparison for you. Tom Cruise is playing a villain in Collateral, usually plays the hero. Schwarzenegger's first Terminator, the villain, usually plays the hero.
Boom.
Mm.
Duke.
There you go.
You're always, that's why we pay you the big bucks.
What big bucks?
All right, moving right on.
Yeah. Duke, what's your third pick?
Well, you were talking about going off the beaten path. I'm staying straight on it. But you got to hear me out here. Loki season 2. Yes, it's a Marvel movie, but Loki is by far the best.
It's actually a Marvel TV show.
Well, MCU. It's all the same. It's the best Disney Plus series. It's also the best thing Marvel's released in a long time. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, also right there. Great. It's rooted in time travel, follows the variant of Loki introduced in Avengers Endgame. TVA, it's this time variance authority that governs the sacred timeline of the MCU. Kangs, yada, yada, yada. Season 2, by far, is even better than Season 1. And now it's starting to deal with... the first episode kind of deals with Loki being kind of, time slipping, which is kind of this like really horrific, like visually, you just show like his body being pulled apart, and then he kind of like snaps into the past or the present, and it's just got this great time travel story right now, much better than anything Marvel's trying to do with time travel in their other series. So if you've fallen off of the MCU train or haven't even got on it, catch up, give Loki a try. You don't have to watch anything else besides the Thor movies and probably the Avengers films, but they're all good. So, well, maybe not some of the Thor films, but get back to Loki. By far, some of the best writing. Visually, they actually built sets. It's not all green screen. There's actually like fully 360 sets. Yeah, old school filmmaking, making a show look a million times better than anything else. Who would have thought? So yeah, Loki season 2. Owen Wilson's in it. Come on.
Wow.
Ka-chow.
Dhal, you have to do a Owen Wilson impression now.
I got nothing.
Oh,
come on, just give us one quick wow.
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 Ka-chow.
What's somebody saying the other day? I heard someone say the other day that what would happen if? Never mind. I can't remember what it was. It was funny. Just believe me. Just go with it.
Someone said something and it was funny.
It was funny. It was about
That's
Owen
that's
Wilson. It was about, it
that's
was
your
about
third
Owen Wilson.
recommendation. Someone said something funny.
Go. All right, you ready for my third?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. There were movies that I wanted to recommend, but I feel like every time I get on a mic and I'm talking to, more than 5 people, I want to recommend books because people should read. They really should read. So I'm going to recommend another book called A Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter M. Miller Jr. Walter M. Miller Jr. It's a sci-fi book from, when was that published? I don't know. It's old, right? Probably 70s, something like that. But it's about the human race gets nuked and society basically breaks down completely and we kind of have to rebuild. And it follows this like Catholic, I guess this Catholic monastery that preserves scientific knowledge. And anyway, the whole book spans like, I don't know how many, couple thousand years or something like that. And it's just a really, really interesting science fiction book that begins with the premise of mankind practically wiping itself out and having to start all over again. And it's really good. It's a classic science fiction book, and you should go read that.
Love it. Yeah, go down to your local library, show them the good old library card, and check out this book. And you're right, Dhal. People should read more. I won't. I just like to watch movies, but no one wants to be a dummy like me. So go out and read so you can be cool and smart like Dhal.
Yeah, Raph, you're part of the problem, my guy. Come on. Oh, it was published in 1959. That's older than I thought it was.
1959.
Yeah, that's too old.
It doesn't read like that though. Really, no, seriously. Like I've read things from that era, especially sci-fi. I'm not a big fan of older, like really old sci-fi. It's just very, I don't know. They get so wrapped up.
H.G. Wells's books are tough to get through. Like the description in old books,
Asimov,
like 3 pages. Oh.
I read a lot of Asimov when I was younger, and it just, I don't know. Yeah, dry is a good word. They just forget that they need to write about something that's like relatable to humans. That's how I feel about it anyway. But this doesn't read like, I don't think this reads as old as some of the stuff we're talking about. So, yeah.
Good pick. We appreciate you, because otherwise people would just be getting, whatever dumb stuff Duke and I are recommending. Yeah, Tom Cruise movie. Yeah. So my third pick, it's actually also a Tom Cruise movie. No, I'm kidding. It's not.
Minority Report.
Yeah. It probably would be Minority Report or War of the Worlds. But it's neither of those. So this is going to sound really weird, but I want you guys to follow me down this path. So I told you guys I couldn't shake the thought of Collateral while I was watching this movie. There was another thing that I couldn't shake, and that was the thought of ice cream. I feel like this movie is like a good scoop of just like really quality ice cream. I do think that Sarah at one point like hides in a ice cream shop, but I might be mistaken. I don't know if I'm remembering that
There's
correctly.
a kid who puts a scoop of ice cream in her waitress dress.
There is that. So maybe that's why. It felt like there was a lot of ice creams, not a lot, but there was enough ice cream stuff going on that I couldn't stop thinking about it. Maybe I was just craving ice cream, and that's what it was. But then I was thinking about this one particular ice cream shop in New York City, and that's what I'm going to recommend. I'm going to recommend that everyone go, if you're ever in New York City, if you're ever visiting, do all the touristy stuff. Check out the Empire State Building, go see the Statue of Liberty, see a play on Broadway, go to the Met, see see Central Park, all of that stuff. But while you're here, while you're in New York, you also got to check out Big Gay Ice Cream in the West Village. And I'm going to tell you why, and I'm going to tell you its connection to the Terminator. So the Terminator, it's this movie. It's made up of all of these classic elements. It's got a pretty standard but very well-paced narrative. It's got a very standard, protagonist who goes on, like Dhal was saying, she goes on a great arc. It's a pretty classic sci-fi story, but at the same time, it's mixing in elements of the horror genre. And what they do at Big Gay Ice Cream is they introduce a lot of like really cool flavors and stuff. So like it's ice cream and it's like really well made ice cream, but they also they have scoops with like potato chips and pretzels and peanut butter and all that kinds of crazy stuff. And you think like none of that should work. The same way if you were reading about the Terminator on paper, you'd be like, none of this should work, not at all. But it's just so ballsy that it does. And Big Gay Ice Cream is the same way. So if you're in New York, if you live here, or if you're visiting, check out Big Gay Ice Cream.
I like how you connected all that.
Okay, I got to stay around. If you heard me chuckling, that was because I pulled up Big Gay Ice Cream's Wikipedia page when you mentioned it, and I got to say this quote. I got to read this quote from one of the co-founders, if you'll allow me.
Oh, let's hear it, please.
According to Doug Quint, if I weren't gay, I wouldn't call it the Big Gay. Oh, because the Big Gay Ice Cream, it's a double meaning because he's gay in real life, but it also ties into the original, older, seldom used definition of happy, says Wikipedia. So according to Quint, if I weren't gay, I wouldn't call it the Big Gay Ice Cream Truck, and if I weren't happy, I wouldn't have the Big Gay Ice Cream Truck. It would just be the Big Krabby Ice Cream Truck, and just Big Krabby kind of elicited a chuckle from me. Just that
Big Gay Ice Cream.
Big Krabby Ice Cream, though, I feel like that could also maybe take off. Like I want to check out that. I
feel like Big Gay is a little. Big Gay is a little more inviting, and like the storefront, it's nice and it's colorful, and you walk in and you're like, this place is lovely, and then they serve you delicious ice cream. So what's not to love?
Raph, you keep recommend every time I'm on, you recommend a food place in New York, and I'm gonna have to book a trip sometime.
You got to book a trip. There's good food out here.
What was the other one? It was like Planet Mario or something. I don't know.
No, the other one was closed, but it was similar to Planet Pizza in Toy Story.
Yeah, that's
so. If anyone's interested to hear what I recommended for that, what restaurant I recommended, please go listen to our Toy Story episode.
I guess I'll have to hop in my time machine and go back in time to hit up pizza, whatever it was called.
Every time I'm there, I want to spend all my time in Central Park.
Does look beautiful, Central Park.
Central Park is amazing,
gorgeous.
But so is Big Gay Ice Cream.
Well, you can get a Big Gay Ice Cream and you can go stroll through Central Park. How about that?
Yeah, there's food trucks. Yeah. What if there's a food truck at Central Park?
You never know.
There you go.
Got to try it out.
And you bring your laptop, you watch the Tom Cruise movies Raph recommended while you eat your Big Gay Ice Cream in Central Park.
Yeah, you go to the New York Public Library, you take out some of the books that Dhal recommended. It's a great time.
Yeah. Just don't get any of the ice cream,
gentlemen,
because they'll charge you for that.
Yeah, that's not good.
That's a big no-no.
Big no-no.
Big no-no, big gay ice cream.
Big gay no-no.
Big gay no-no. Before we get out of here, because it seems like we're all losing our minds, let's quickly run through our recommendations one more time. Boom, boom, boom. And we'll go same order. Duke, go for it.
I got Triangle. It's a psychological thriller horror film. I have The Creator, sci-fi film dealing with AI. Still playing in theaters, maybe. Go see it. And then I got Loki Season 2, set in the MCU, but it's pretty much standalone. Watch it if you've fallen off the MCU train.
I've got the Berserker book series by Fred Saberhagen. Murderous machines marching across the galaxy. They're unstoppable. They're here to kill. Read it. I've got Colossus, the Forbin Project, an old movie, 1970 movie about AI run amok. Kind of slow, but worth checking out. And then I've got A Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter M. Miller Jr. It's an old science fiction book about nuclear annihilation and humanity rebuilding itself. I think a couple times actually over the course of maybe 1 or 2 or 3,000 years. So really interesting book. For sure, check it out.
And I've got Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, Collateral, and Big Gay Ice Cream. Duke, Dhal, thank you guys again for joining. This has been an absolute pleasure. Another wonderful movie, forever enshrined into the canon. Any final words, anything that folks should be looking out for on the website, or any parting words of wisdom for anyone?
Ooh,
Time's up, kid. We gotta get out of here.
what is that
That's
from?
all I've got for you.
Is that, Dhal,
is
do you
that
have
dog
your
right
own
doing that?
soundboard?
I thought that was rad.
High tech over here, guys. Hey, shut up! Stop talking. Get out of here.
That was amazing.
That was great.
What can I say, guys?
No, we just got lots of good stuff still on Screen Age Wasteland coming up in November 2023. So if you're listening to this later, go to the archives. Yeah, lots of stuff coming up over the month. Lots of great horror stuff we just did in October you can check out. And then, of course, Christmas is coming up. We'll have some good stuff then. Otherwise, you can catch me watching Back to the Future. Or Terminator.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys again. Sorry, Dhal, go for it.
I am working on a fiction project that
Ooh.
if at the pace that I work, look for that in about 30 or 40 years.
Spicy.
It's gonna be great.
We'll be on the lookout for it.
Yeah.
That's awesome though.
Don't hold your breath.
We will certainly be looking forward to that. In the meantime, you can check out other episodes of the Canon. We'll be back next week with Intolerance. Sailor and I will be chatting about that. A movie I've not seen, I believe, a pretty early on silent film. So that'll be a really cool episode to check out. But until then, in the meantime, Screenagers, stay safe, stay awesome, and we will see you in the wasteland.